Hi, I want to talk about dragons. From the rainbow serpent of Australia, to the Chinese lung, to the fire-breathing Aztec Xiuquatl, the one constant of mythologies across the globe isn't death or taxes, it's dragons. With their fire breath, large wings, and lizard-like appearance, these mythical beasts have been synonymous with the fantasy genre as far back as Tolkien, and have continued to influence pop culture to this day. However, this wasn't always what dragons looked like, and what medieval Europeans thought of as a dragon looks very different from what we think of as a dragon today. For example, this is a dragon. In this video, we'll delve into the ancient mythological origins of all these dragons, look at how dragons were portrayed in medieval literature and art, and even discover how these deadly monsters came to represent the greatest evil of all, the devil himself. The medieval dragon as a concept can trace its origins far back in history, to ancient Greece and Mesopotamia. One of the earliest known examples of a dragon-like monster is the Mushushu of Mesopotamian mythology, a scaled beast with 2 horns and 4 legs, but, notably, no wings. The ancient Greek drakon, a mythical wingless serpent, was a common fixture of Greek myths and legends, and a very big source for a lot of European conceptions about dragons. Many Greek heroes, including Cadmus, Perseus, and the famous Heracles, were said to have slain one. These concepts of dragons would also carry over into the Roman Empire, where they mixed with other military traditions to form the Roman cavalry standard, the Draco. Consisting of a dragon's head mounted on a spike and decorated with strips of fabric, the Draco was also used as an intimidation tactic. As the cavalry charged, the strips of fabric would catch the wind, emitting an eerie whistling noise to frighten Rome's enemies. Elsewhere in Europe, Norse and Germanic mythologies had their own depictions of dragons in the form of worms, large serpents known for hoarding gold and dwelling in caves. These ferocious snakes included Jormungandr, the world serpent, Fafnir, a long serpentine worm, and Nidhogg, a large worm who dwells at the roots of the world tree. However, perhaps the most influential depiction of a dragon in Norse and Germanic mythology is the dragon in Beowulf, a poem written in Old English right around the turn of the first millennium. Beowulf's dragon is alternatively described as both a dragon and a worm, and it has almost all of the qualities we have come to associate with dragons. It dwells in a layer of gold underneath the earth, it flies, it terrorizes the local villagers, and it even breathes fire. The only thing that's missing is a helpless maiden for it to kidnap. Don't worry, that'll come later. Despite all these supernatural abilities and fantastical stories associated with dragons, the popular belief at the time was that dragons were very much real and very much dangerous. In the natural history, the Latin writer Pliny includes dragons right alongside descriptions of elephants, lions, and panthers, with no assertion that they might be mythological anywhere. This was a belief that persisted well into the medieval period, and the early medieval scholar Isidore of Seville described dragons vividly. Dragons were a common fixture of medieval art and literature, especially in the marginalia of medieval manuscripts. Small drawings intended to embellish, comment on, illustrate, or even make light of the text on display. These marginalia dragons are a bit weird, to put it mildly, and their depictions varied a lot, with different numbers of heads, limbs, and tails, different face shapes, and even feathered wings instead of the typical leathery bat-like wings. Your average medieval dragon wouldn't have looked at all like our modern idea of a dragon. It probably would have had 2 legs instead of 4, a long coiling tail, an almost dog-like face, and wings of any number of shapes and sizes. However, around 1400, an artistic shift occurred, and artists began moving away from these weird-looking 2-legged dragons, and towards a body type that much more closely resembles the dragons of today. Dragon art wasn't always just fancy embellishment, however. Dragons also rode into battle in the form of heraldry, outwardly projecting a symbol of strength and ferociousness to anyone who might dare challenge them. A golden wyvern adorned the coat of arms of a Welsh king, and the Tudor family of England adopted the dragon into their own heraldry. It is here where dragons begin to become distinguished by number of legs, with 2-legged dragons given the name wyverns, and 4-legged dragons being considered the true dragons, which are distinctions that still persist today. In addition to art, medieval Europe also had plenty of stories of dragons, particularly involving the saints. One of the most popular of these legends is, of course, the story of St. George, the patron saint of England. The story itself provides a lot of the basis for classic modern fairy tales about dragons like Sleeping Beauty. One day, St. George comes across a poison-breathing dragon extorting tribute from a nearby city. The king's daughter is offered up as tribute to the dragon, and St. George saves her by taming the dragon with a leash and then killing it. In awe of George's power, the entire city then converts to Christianity. This story sparked dozens of other dragon legends throughout England, and many other saints got their own stories of dragons. Saints Philip and Sylvester killed dragons in defense of the faith, and St. Margaret of Antioch was even said to have burst from the stomach of a dragon alien style. thus granting her the honor of being the patron saint of pregnancy. In all of these instances, dragons were seen as very real and very dangerous threats to society, which could only be defeated by the power of the big man himself. These battles between saints and dragons therefore weren't just physical battles against insurmountable foes, they were metaphors for the broader struggle between Christianity and Satanism, as well as Christianity and pagan beliefs. As far back as the New Testament, serpents and dragon-like creatures have been associated with satanic influences, with the mythical sea serpent Leviathan in particular being a representation of satanic forces and the embodiment of primordial chaos. Later on, early Christian stories of winged dragons mixed with depictions of dragons in cultures from Greece to Norway to form many of medieval Christianity's ideas about dragons. Dragons were the embodiment of the ultimate evil, the devil himself, and in slaying them, Christianity reasserted itself as the natural order over pagan beliefs. However scary dragons may have seemed to a person living in medieval Europe, the fact remained that no one had ever seen one. Of course, there were stories of your cousin's wife's brother's dog seeing a dragon one day, but all stories of dragons inherently relied on some level of hearsay and speculation. As a result, dragons, despite their prevalence in medieval stories, remained a threat coming from outside of society, one that dwelled in the spaces between civilizations, and in the untamed wilderness of far-off places. Frequently, dragons were associated with Africa and the Middle East, and many stories of dragons involve them being encountered by travelers on a journey from one pocket of civilization to another. After all, when you might never travel outside of the region you were born in your whole life, and when any number of things could be lurking on the furthest edges of the map, dragons were a creature as real as any other. Ultimately, I think the reason that dragons have been as popular as they are throughout all of human history is precisely because of this flexibility in how they are defined. Dragons could represent any number of societal or personal problems, from the troubles of paganism to the might and power of an invading army. And, if the stories are to be believed, with bravery, a noble heart, and a very long, very pointy stick, such monsters can, in fact, be killed. Now, if you don't mind, I'm off to fight a dragon. Ah! Average Tuesday at Bates College.